Hey there, I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and we got the Tyler the Creator album bomb, plus one of the most contentious songs of this year, of course from Jessie Murph, and it's Billboard Breakdown.
I don't remember.
I've highlighted weeks like this before as being both more and less busy than they might appear. On the one hand, it's the week after 3 album bombs, which normally leads to a flood of songs returning or gaining, but we also got Tyler the Creator dropping a surprise album, which mitigated some of that. And in the story of 2025, it's not like a lot of the bigger songs moved that much anyway along the way. It might be next week where we experience the real fallout from this. And given that I'm shooting this while my move to my new place is still happening, I'm gonna take any break that I can get. And of course, the other side of this is that when we're looking at our top 10, for another week, Ordinary by Alex Warren has a stranglehold on the number 1. Or does it? This looks again like a margins game the more I dig into it, because while the sales are still strong and the streaming is rock solid, the radio looks like it's peaking, which might foretell at least part of the industry is getting tired of this song this summer. I could only wish that the nearest competition wasn't Golden from K-pop Demon Hunters at number 2, where it might lag on sales and radio's got no clue what to do with it, but it's now dominant on streaming, and right behind it is Daisies by Justin Bieber at number 3, which lost a little bit more sales and is a bit behind on streams, but the radio push behind it is spirited. If managed properly, I think this could well make a play for the number 1. Hell, it held up over What I Want by Morgan Wallen featuring Tate McRae, which slipped down to number 4, which again, if Wallen didn't have so many other songs in circulation, it'd be able to actually make radio inroads to match its huge streaming. Case in point, Just in Case by Morgan Wallen at number 5, which is now losing its radio edge even as streaming is pretty stable. Compare this to Love Me Not by Ray Villanet up to number 6. This could well be a consistent hit as both the streaming and radio push are in full swing. I don't see it getting the top spot, but sleeper hit could well be in the cards. And then, as if I'm not annoyed enough, Lose Control by Teddy Swims for some ungodly reason rose up to number 7 because it saw a slight spike on streaming and radio is stable. We're just never getting rid of this song, especially as it held over a bar song Tipsy by Shabuzi falling down to number 8, where it might have more radio on a steady decline, but the streaming is considerably weaker. Then, re-entering the top 10, we got Luther by Kendrick Lamar and SZA at number 9. Chalk this up to a mostly stable radio week, which I can't say was the case for Die With A Smile by Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars at number 10, where the radio losses weren't much, but enough of a streaming lag is going to strand it a bit lower before it falls out of the top 10. And that naturally takes us to our losers and dropouts, where if we look at the latter, the vast majority came from the album bombs just fading away, with the only 2 major exits clinching their year-end list spots for 2025, both coming from country. Weren't for the Wind by Ella Langley and Indigo by Sam Barber and Avery Anna. The latter feels a little bit overdue, to be honest, see back to last week's episode. And when we look at our losers, the story really is from the fading album bombs. From Justin Bieber, we got Yukon at 38, Go Baby at 66, and Walking Away at 77, ironically titled. From Travis Scott, Kick Out at 64, Dumbo at 75, and Champagne and Vacay at 87 with Don Toliver. And from Clips, Just Chains and Whips with Kendrick Lamar clinging on to 86. Outside those, well, off the debut, Jump by Blackpink tumbled down to 53. River Washed Hair by Zach Bryan continued to decline at 90. And What Did I Miss by Drake just did not perform at 23. Somehow, he's going to find a way to complain about this, and I'm still not surprised that it happened. But what's replacing all of this? Well, for one, there's a lot of returns here, most of which haven't seen a ton of play, but are trying to rebuild some momentum. Typa by Glorilla at 100. Somewhere Over Laredo by Lainey Wilson at 99. Nice to Meet You by Miles Smith at 96. Bar None by Jordan Davis at 95. No Broke Boys by Disco Lines and Tinashe at 91. Went Legit by G Herbo at 89. Sparks by Coldplay at 80. And Better Me For You Brown Eyes by Max McNown at 72. But the story of our returns is that in the passing of rock and metal legend Ozzy Osbourne, not only do we have a new arrival from his career we're going to talk about, we also saw the return of Mama I'm Coming Home at 49. Sadly feels apropos. Meanwhile, when we look at our gains, the big story here is K-pop Demon Hunters. Free at 30, What It Sounds Like at 31, and both versions of Takedown, the movies and the one from Twice, at 39 and 76 respectively. There were a couple songs that saw album bomb recoveries, like Party For You by Charlie XCX clawed back to 83, Twilight Zone by Ariana Grande rebounded again to 81, Hard Fought Hallelujah by Brandon Lake just refuses to die at 78. Some irony in that. But what's more telling are the songs that are largely stable but made positional gains. Backup Plan by Bailey Zimmerman and Luke Combs, which stubbornly is actually stuck around at 34. Burning Blue by Mariah the Scientist at 36. Happened to Me by Russell Dickerson at 50. And Folded by Kehlani holding up at 70. But again, this is an album bomb week for Tyler the Creator with Don't Tap the Glass. And thankfully for a project I have already covered, we're only looking at the best, worst, or top 40. So outside of those, Tell Me What You Want at 82, Don't You Worry Baby with Madison McFerrin at 59, Don't Tap the Glass, Tweakin at 56, I'll Take Care of You with YEBBA at 55, Mommanem at 54, Sucka Free at 48, Ring 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 at 44, very nearly had one of my top spots, and Sugar on My Tongue at 41. And now, with a thankfully more reasonable list of new arrivals, number 94, Frecuencia by Dareyes de la Sierra.
Qué bueno está el ondeado, esta frecuencia me mama, dos culos que me esperan en la cama. Doble paso de ando mal terrorista y una dama bien machín, pura verificada la que se me monta aquí.
So the last time I spoke on this act was just over 2 years ago, when they were apparently guest with Peso Pluma on a song that I mostly liked because of their frontman's presence. So I was at least intrigued for them finally breaking to the Hot 100 solo. And honestly kind of torn, because I do think their frontman's got a lot of brawny presence against the fatter bass line and the accordion rollick, even if I think the farty trumpets remain distracting for a pretty jaunty vibe. But then you translate the lyrics, and the juxtaposition between the opening, where he talks about expecting his death and then appreciating the small mundane things in the meantime, so then might as well flex with this weird dejected feeling of routine. I mean, I get a handle on the tone, I'm just not sure it's landing as well as they're hoping. It's certainly not bad. I think it might be more interesting enough to be memorable in comparison with a lot of the regional Mexican songs I've heard. That just doesn't exactly translate to good. Number 92, Strategy by Twice. Alright, let me get this straight. Twice put out a brand new album, and even though I don't think it's very good, there is nothing from that project that's going viral but this, a song from last year with an uncredited Megan Thee Stallion feature. But even that's not quite correct, because it's not going viral, and it's actually a version that doesn't have Megan Thee Stallion because it got tied to the K-pop Demon Hunter soundtrack, and it's only charted because of that. And man, I'm not sure I agree this is remotely good enough to work without Meg, with the chintzy, buzzy saturation of the synths and that second half of the song begin falling off key around the overmixed percussion that then tilts into multiple late 2010s pop trap breakdowns. And if Twice were strong or distinctive enough singers to overcompensate for the clattering pileup, that would be one thing. But all of it is asserting some strategy to win over this guy where even their shadow can be hot, and honestly, I just don't think there's enough here without Meg to anchor it. At least with her swagger, she could just muscle on through. So yeah, again, I hear a miss with this era of Twice, and given how much I used to like this K-pop band, that's a damn shame. Number 84, 1965 by Jessie Murph.
Like it's 1965.
It's rarely a good sign when I have to deal with the controversy with this song before actually talking about the track itself, especially when I feel like it's very much misaligned with the real problem. So in case you missed it, I don't know how, but Jessie Murph's video for this song featured the sort of graphic sex scene that not only was intentionally not sexy, but came across as a total shock to her pop audience, who apparently didn't clue into an artist releasing an album called Sex Hysteria might actually go there. Now, to be frank, I wasn't bothered by it. I've seen too many exploitation films from the era she's calling back to be surprised. She's very obviously setting up as edgy satire of the regressive conservatism of that era around gender roles. It's why the camera was pointing back at the audience in the final shots to draw the juxtaposition between what was acceptable then and how far we've really come makes you think. Hell, I'll even give her a bit of grace and say that for someone born and growing up in Alabama at age 20, might have some messy or incoherent thoughts around sex that she's still processing within the twisted landscape of modern Gen Z pop and the music industry. It's certainly reflected in the ugly slew of relationship songs she's made over the past couple of years, and the overall backlash seems to be a lot more rooted in showing any non-erotic sex at all in the video for artistic purposes. I read those comments, "You can't hide from me," and doesn't that say something fascinating? Which I could have an entire field day in a longer video I may or may not be planning on my main channel. But there's only so much grace I can give when the song itself is a mess. Jessie Murph's painful drawl that desperately wants to be Elle King can't blend with the elegant keys, strings, or trumpet, trying for some throwback 60s soul, but with really clunky bass mastering. The lyrical cadence is really clumsy on the verses. And about that intended satire, I know that the faded outro is trying to imply that she doesn't really know anything about that era, but the balance feels completely askew when the fake retro fetishism for its glam and romance doesn't have the teeth to really challenge the modern era in its lyrics. If you want to set up the parallel and contrast, why not highlight the modern manosphere or the political actors today who idolize the 60s for all the wrong reasons and want to roll back rights, other than you just complaining about shitty modern dating? I mean, I get it, but you could go deeper. I know highlighting the ignorance is the point, but when you weave it with seemingly unironic touches of that throwback glam in both your song and music video, the lens gets increasingly blurry, and your satire isn't just basic, toothless, and kind of unfunny. It leads to this sort of backfire. Ironically, because of the sex in the music video, it won't even be embraced by the dudes who have those trad wife fantasies, so it becomes closer to Riverdale core, trying to make a semi-progressive point with something that might be close to transgressive, but too basic, ham-fisted, and incoherent to convincingly stick the landing between past and present. And I would prefer the critique is there instead of portraying sex in the video in a way that might provoke more revulsion than titillation. Because once we recognize the challenging artistic value in that conversation, we might actually move forward. But the song is still bad. Number 62, Madeline by Bryan featuring Gabriella Rose.
Well, I saw all your friends, and you weren't there.
Well, that was way too much. Let's move on to a song that is apparently intended for Bryan's upcoming album for next year, even though he just put out an EP he could be pushing right now. But okay, fine. This is a very spare acoustic and piano ballad that barely clocks 2.5 minutes, where he exchanges some verses with country newcomer Gabriella Rose as she plays the titular character Madeline, where he's yearning for her back in his life and hoping that she hasn't moved on. And truth is, she hasn't. She's still pining over him while he's on the road. She wants him to come back. It's just miscommunication here. Now, that's not a bad sentiment for a song. One of my favorite Blake Shelton songs is Austin. It relies on a similar hope for reconnection, and it was honestly a way better song because this feels undercooked. The guitar texture and subtle melodic interplay is kind of nice, but given Bryan wrote and produced all of this, it can't help but read a little bit like wish fulfillment when it's this stripped down, writing this girl that would be yearning for him. I don't know, it's fine, but he's written better material. Definitely not lead-off single material. I'll definitely say that. Number 51, Stop Playing With Me by Tyler, the Creator.
Stop playing with me, bitch. Nigga, stop playing with me. Fuck you and your mama, stop playing with me. Fuck you and your dreams, stop playing with me. Stop playing.
There seems to be an intriguing split with the reception of Tyler's new album between those who want all the pop bounce and those who want the throwback bangers. And while I think there's actually quality in both, Ring 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 is legit great, very close to getting some coverage in this episode, I thought this was the real standout. The grimy synth against the fizzy shuffle of the beat with the echo of the emptying clip as that thicker bass comes in to saturate the mix on the chorus, and Tyler's infectiously catchy West Coast sneer anchoring the kiss-off off helps him get away with some of the more, let's call it, insane lines here. I kind of roll my eyes at the "I'm too sick achoo," but fuck you and your dreams. I drown in it like I swim bad. Your and others if I crash this plane. It's exactly the sort of energy I wanted to hear for this sort of song. Completely over the top. Absolute banger. A ton of fun. Unfortunately, he's stuck competing with number 46, Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne.
I'm going off the rails on a crazy train. Everybody clap your hands now, come on.
You know, on some level, it doesn't even seem fair. Even when Tyler, the Creator, has tangible contenders for that top spot, one of the biggest new songs this week is goddamn Crazy Train because of Ozzy's death. How the hell do you even compete with that? Now, I imagine the big question here is, why didn't this chart in 1980 when it first came out? Because if you look back at the Hot 100 of that year, it could certainly have used it. And the answer is kind of simple. When the Hot 100 required records to be served up to pop radio, and when Ozzy's run with Black Sabbath made him a household name in rock and metal circles, when Sabbath barely charted on the Hot 100 at their peak, and the mainstream rock chart was only introduced in 1981, its success was mostly confined there, and it was successful. And look, what am I supposed to say about one of the most iconic minor key opening riffs in history before the scrappy major key galloping lead guitar line from Randy Rhoads drives into a killer melodic hook and a phenomenal solo? Yeah, the production could desperately afford some thicker atmosphere, but that's kind of what you had to expect from this era, and the song has held up from the test of time. Ironically, Ozzy's probably not what I focus on most with this song. His howling is solid, and I like the lyrics about cold wear paranoia, balancing the fear, but also the heady rush that comes of leaning into the fear and just rolling through it. But the original studio production doesn't really amplify his presence. Future remastering would correct this. But still, it's a classic. If somehow you haven't heard it, you really should. Especially as I think the Prince of Darkness left on one of the best notes possible. Number 33, Big Poe by Tyler, the Creator, featuring Skateboard.
Bitch, I'm Big Poe, slim. I hate light-skinned niggas on my mama. I like dark-skinned bitches like my mama. I like light-skinned bitches like my daddy. You ain't like that line, not my problem.
Okay, for clarity's sake, Skateboard is just Pharrell under a different rap name that he used briefly in 2011. It's not surprising that he and Tyler were gonna work together on this project when you get his whirring sandy shuffle around the bassy rumble and the gleaming keys. It's incredibly danceable with some very tangible 2000s menace, down to the sample of Busta Rhymes from Pass the Courvoisier. I really wish that Pharrell was doing anything beyond the flexing of expensive jewelry and his planes. Showing any sort of substantial wordplay would have been nice. Quite frankly, Tyler could have handled this by himself when he's on his pure, nasty bragging that splits the queer sex lines with a sneering punch. And hell, I don't tend to trust white guys with dreadlocks either. That's a keen observation. Balance that out with a line tied to green eggs and ham, that's just funny. I think Pharrell holds this back from getting to a higher gear, but it's still a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing Tyler deliver all this live. Good song. Check it out. And finally, number 16, Eternity by Alex Warren.
Since I had you here with me, since I had to learn to be someone you don't know.
So I commented a couple weeks ago that there's been conspiracy springing up around how successful Alex Warren has been with the inability of any larger act to really dislodge Ordinary from the top spot, where I would argue there's both systemic factors and the artists gunning for that top haven't put forward their best efforts. But the other truth here is that to the silent majority audience, Alex Warren is unmistakably really goddamn big, with a number of songs that are way better than Ordinary, and thus I had some hopes that this new single could at least be solid, and yeah, I can't really say it wins me over. Let me start by saying that the central sentiment is actually quite good. Alex Warren misses his dad, who passed away when he was 9 years old, where the strings and the grand gospel chorus yearning for his father's presence and guidance, that makes a lot of sense. It's a wail of grief and pain. But there are two elements that throw me off. The first being how brittle that acoustic guitar is at its core. You get the impression that the sort of tasteful delicacy is the point, but for a song that's trying to go for broke and feel so powerful, a little bit more meat could really help. But the second it was this line on the hook, "To be with you in paradise, what I wouldn't sacrifice." That's suicidal ideation, dude. I understand the angst to go there, but it's clumsy enough to push into awkwardly oversold when the easier sentiment is just having your father back here with you now instead of you being dead. I don't know, that line really cripples an otherwise fine song for me, especially given that it's on the hook. Honestly, kinda has it landing worse than ordinary. Can't say I care for it. And yeah, that's our week. Kind of a dud note to end things off on, but the best and the worst, they fall out pretty damn fast. With 1965 by Jessie Murph handily taking the bottom spot, albeit for reasons that you might not otherwise think, and Strategy by Twice nabbing the dishonorable mention, in that case almost off of purely disappointment. Best of the week, I'm sorry, Tyler, you're getting honorable mention for Stop Playing With Me. A great song, but the top spot's going to Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne, and I don't even think Tyler would argue with that. Next week might actually give me a bit of a breather unless this falls off as quickly, which might not happen given that the album's only off of midweek performance. We will have to see. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.